Alright, part four. Four. Anyway, of this Joe Rogan thing, just mention about the title, it is a play on the third eye thing, Turd, asshole, third eye, third asshole. Anyway, just pointing that out. I don't really do the joke thing very well. I mean, I don't get jokes and I don't tell jokes very well. Unless it's completely by accident. So anyway. So where we are. So this is the whatever. This is a talk show of some kind. So they spent an hour and 40 minutes? No, it's got to be just an hour. Yeah, okay. An hour. So far. It's just all this, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, the world's coming to an end. And part of this is because of a political problem that exists. And I guess maybe that's the thing nobody wants to talk about, is that we have these political systems all around the world, whether it's a parliamentary system or our system, they're all based on the same sort of thing, this whole geography thing, winner take all for districts, all that kind of stuff. And the real problem is you gravitate to these parties, these dominant left-right positions, groups, labor, Tory kind of thing. Yin yang, whatever you want to call it. It always comes down to something like that. And the coalitions that make those things work. Okay, so some of them are controlled by, some control both parties. Like neither party wants to offend certain institutions or collective groups like old people or something, because they know, oh, that's going to be very bad for our, getting elected. But it's really just about collecting votes. And so if there's some voting block that's been underappreciated by one party or the other, the party may collect that as an interest and say, we will placate their interests, we will make deal, so to speak, we'll bargain with them in a way, by representing them, their interests, and therefore be able to increase the percentage of that group or class that will affirmatively vote for us. And so you get a lot of people, like I said, I give the example of my father. My father's a conservative in the sense of the economic part of it. He didn't give a shit about all this religious shit or socialism, social policy crap. I don't think he gives much of a damn. Might be a bit of a racist, so it goes Republican for, yes, they're, at least got a few of their toes in the Klan's pocket, and that probably pleases him. But generally speaking, much of the Republican agenda he doesn't have any use for. I could make the argument about socialism in the Soviet Union. I'd say, okay, yeah, socialism's a good idea, but that stupid part where you're afraid of rock and roll, that was fucking retarded. All these moral crimes against the state, that was just stupid. And so you just made your socialism embarrassingly retarded by associating it with a bunch of idiotic social paranoia that was useless. And so right now we're sitting in this system, I'm trying to get to the point, which is the subject of transgender or this whole identity politics and even race is a subject the liberals have tended to gravitate towards in terms of finding this an acceptable member of the club, so to speak. And that has also now been converted into any immigrant is a beautiful thing. Immigration is wonderful. When much of the Democratic Party is made up of people who had huge investments in labor politics, where the immigrant labor just looks like scabs who have come to destroy the wage base and all of our power to negotiate good contracts. So that's where this problem starts to develop, is if you're too blanket in your endorsement, then you start corrupting the other interests and your party dissolves. And both parties have been feeling this in the sense that you know, it looked like a year or two ago that Republicans were in crisis. They even look in crisis in the primary. You know, if Trump didn't win the primary, the Republicans were in crisis because they were going to lose badly because they didn't bring anything to the table that was in any way new. And so all they had was the Trump card, you know, well, somebody bring up immigration and that will destroy the Democrats because that subject is not, there's no solid representation among most Democrats saying, I love immigration. It's not even consistent with one of the core principles of the Democratic Party, which is to embrace and enhance the power of labor. So it's almost a huge offense to the Labor Party, and that's the, you know, the labor element of the party. This notion of bring in desperate workers to take all our jobs and destroy our wages. So anyway, that's the underlying current to all this. So you're stuck pigeonholing and labeling people because they have an affiliation that's completely anti. Okay, I'm anti-religion and I'm anti-rich. So I'm clearly not a Republican. I can only be described as anything not Republican. Because the Republicans lose on every subject. I mean, they're not rational on any of the subjects. They don't even balance the budget on, you know, they don't have any principles that are of use. So I have no choice but to be on the other side, whatever it is, because Republicans always wrong. They get every answer to every question on the test they get wrong, because their values are idiotic. Religion and rich people, and that's all they got, and it sucks. But yeah, but if you take a single issue like immigration and just pretend you're not a Republican, you're just an anti-immigrant guy, well, yeah, there's an automatic say that, okay, yeah, well, if you don't have the liability of religious tyranny and you know, rich people benefit, then that's doable. But obviously Trump was a loser on the rich person thing. That was obvious, that corruption. And you know, I don't pay federal taxes, income taxes, for a good reason. Yeah, you know, no, it's not for a good reason. So yeah, you can kind of see what this whole thing comes down to. So these people arguing as if, you know, all the liberals, all the anti-corporatists, or all the anti-religious kookists are somehow, you know, something like tranny enabling. Like they just have no other desire but then to break every single cultural institution. That's not really the goal. That's not really what they want. But they do have a capacity to say, I'm not going to get hysterical over that stuff. That stuff doesn't matter. And I'd even say, you know, that a subject like immigration, I certainly wouldn't trade, you know, rational immigration policy for tax cuts for the rich, or for religious kooks defining what gets taught at public schools. I wouldn't make those trades either. So anyway, that's the complexity of this context. So these conversations, and without some understanding that this isn't really a subject where, you know, like they try to make this into Marxist doctrine or something, or this is some kind of fundamental element of the left, you know, that it's trying to erode or corrode or destroy all tradition or something. No. I'm not trying to backstep or backslide or to even soften my advocacy for the fact that people should be allowed to be quite, I'll even use the word deviant, in their personal expressions. I don't care if people dye their hair. I don't care if they get foot implants. I don't, you know, whatever the thing is they need to do to make themselves feel whole, I don't care. I don't know about us having to finance it or something. That I care about, maybe. You know, like it's some sort of entitlement. to, you know, be reborn in their new form. But maybe they should just call it a religion. You know, at least you get a tax exemption, something like that. You know, for donating. So anyway, I don't know if that was helpful, but I think it's important to recognize there is a context to this conversation at this point in time in history, and that this subject really just doesn't deserve all this hysteria, because there's no real movement in the country that's going to say, you know, let's get preposterously indulgent. There's a point where it will say, no, we're not going to make the seats on planes big enough for 1,200-pound people to sit in them, because 4 1,200-pound people a year want a plane seat, or something like that. It's not going to get to that point. So all this hysteria is quite unnecessary. This, whatever this is, this rigidity, this, oh, I must resist, I must fight back. And again, what does your fighting back do but just create the image of the passive racist? It just creates the image of, well, maybe there is something for me to fight against, because it does look like, why are they panicking? Why is this bothering them so much? They must have an agenda. And you hear him talking. You know, this is like communism. You know, trannyism is like communism. No, not really.
Too simple, but distinguishing between simple and too simple is no easy matter. We like to know who's our friend and who's our enemy, and we like the feeling of unearned moral superiority. And then
well, again, so everybody wants the unearned moral superiority. So again, I don't even know what that means. Like there's some sort of earned moral superiority. And I guess that means when you have my values, you've earned it. When you don't have my values, you didn't earn it. That kind of crap. When earning would be something based on, in that kind of category, you could say even a lunatic deserves some sort of respect. So I could say, okay, a Buddhist earns some sort of respect because he pours gasoline on himself and catches himself on fire. I mean, he's earned his moral commentary, you know. But in a sense, you'd also say, but not really, because he's an idiot. I mean, because it's based on these silly notions that somehow this exempts him. He's now purified himself. And it's almost selfish in a way, right? Because by his own philosophy, this death by fire means that now he's exempt from being one of the peons. He's exempt from being a slave on earth again. So it's almost an act of selfishness. I mean, so it just always gets complicated.
And moral superiority.
Yeah,
that's the
why earn it,
distinction.
man?
Yeah, of course. Yes, you always do that kind of stuff. Yeah, you don't like anybody judging, right? So judgment is what you're really afraid of, buddy. Is any kind of judgment, and the judgment that might have some sort of reason to it. So again, you're saying you only earn your right to talk if you have big fat wallet. But if you're talking about how fat wallet should be and how the money should get into the wallet, maybe you don't want to have that conversation, because then maybe you'll realize, yeah, so many of your type didn't earn it.
Especially when there's no such thing as earning anyways. So
that doesn't make any sense.
Oh, and then, I mean, there's deeper and darker things that are underneath that. It's like the human proclivity to pull down those who have...
Oh, I got to speed this up. Sorry, that's what we're missing here. Yeah, I'm saying, boy, this is really going to drag it on, isn't it? So, sorry, but yeah, I really need to, just to get through this.
More than you. It's like these kids on the campuses who are claiming identity with the oppressed. You know, somewhere like Yale. It's like, how in the world you can speak of oppression if you happen to be at Yale is beyond me. I mean,
so again, why would that have anything to do with it? You don't think, I mean, the entire story, I just mentioned Buddha, right? But the entire story of Buddha is he was preposterously wealthy, the king of Buddhism, okay, Buddhita, and, you know, all that he surveyed, so to speak. And he was able to observe the inequity and the sourness that existed. So even though he had privilege, he was perfectly capable of going out and smelling the cesspool, so to speak.
First of all, you're North American, which puts you in the top 1%. And then of North Americans, you're in the top 1%, so you're in the top 1% of 1%. But yet you want that. You want to have all the power that goes along with that. And you want to have the moral superiority that comes from being representative of the oppressed. So that's exactly what you want. You want all the power, and you want all the victimization at the same time.
Well, yeah.
Well, again, that's your, I don't even understand what that is about what you want, when it really just comes down to what you observe and what you understand to be the truth. So there's many rich people who understand that, no, you shouldn't cut taxes on the rich. The rich are doing just fine. They don't need tax cuts. So, I mean, there's lots of people who can speak to something that might not be in their own interest or from their own protected class, and they'll understand that, no, we're not fighting a fair fight. And yes, a fair fight would be a good idea. Let's do that.
Yale's a great example, because Yale was one of what happened with the Halloween costume debacle at Yale was one of the first videos that was released that made people horrified, where they couldn't believe how students were communicating with professors.
Yeah, well, the student who screamed up a storm about that the male professor, who was the husband of the woman who wrote the pro-Halloween costume letter, it turned out she was on the bloody hiring committee that hired him. One of the things she screamed was, "Who hired you?" It's like, well, it turned out it was you, because you were on the committee just a few years before.
I don't know if that is true anyway, but I don't know what the whole Yale costume thing is, but I'm sure it's not nearly as important about 7,678,448 subjects that could be talked about on planet Earth. I'm sure the Yale costume debacle doesn't really merit any attention by anyone.
I know, and they took, like, yeah, that was absolutely...
Explain that to people that don't know what the hell we're talking about.
Well...
Explain this debacle, because it really was about questionable Halloween costumes.
Well, it was about questioning Halloween costumes. Halloween costumes are... part of the whole point of Halloween is to have questionable costumes, right? You play with death, for example, and decay, and horror. And it's...
Okay, I just saw a little clip of a video of him having this, almost crying because he had nightmares about nuclear war. I mean, it was just about crying. So I'm sure there's subjects that are taboo for this guy. I'm sure if your costume has some Stalin-Leninist, happiness to it, the joy of, probably offends him.
It's a time when the norms with regards to the expression of things that are outside of our normal behavior are suspended so that everybody can
Right, well, this presumes that you have any use for that nonsense anyway. Like, I've always been quite anti-Halloween costuming. I mean, it's just... I never got the whole thing. The whole thing never made any sense to me. It was just this excuse to go out and get candy. Once that was over, that was done. And I just couldn't find any give a care about this Halloween thing as some sort of holiday. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'd rather go rolling eggs on a lawn somewhere and pretend I'm doing something reasonable than wear silly costumes.
Have a little celebration. As it turns out, well, campuses have got all upset about things like cultural appropriation. At Queen's University in Canada just the other week, they were going after...
You're off the different subject now. I wanted to hear about what this great Yale costume debacle was.
For students who were dressing up as Viet Cong, for example, or Mexicans. It's like, I just don't see what the hell's racist about dressing up like a Mexican. Mexicans have a traditional clothing. There's nothing wrong with Mexicans, so why is it wrong to dress up like them?
Right. If you want to be...
The stereotype. Oh, okay. Why is it wrong to sit there and enforce a stereotype, a pigeonholed misrepresentation? So again, if we all just wear giant, like, Reagan bobbleheads, with voodoo economics, some kind of voodoo economic tilting devices on them or something, I don't know. Is there really some kind of point? No, I don't see any point. Make an argument or shut the fuck up. Arguing with costumes is really dumb.
Pancho Villa for Halloween. What's wrong with that?
Well, you can regard that as an homage just as much as a denigration. It's like, why is that such a problem?
Right.
But anyways, it doesn't matter because nothing's too trivial to be a problem to a social justice warrior. And
I don't. But you seem like nothing's too trivial to you either. Again, this worrying about these social justice warriors. Again, what even sense does it make to sit there and mock somebody for on terminology like that? I mean, it really is just kind of stupid. I can't think of any example off the top of my head anyway of how some kind of term for something good is appropriately applied to something bad. And it works that way. I can't think of anything. I can't think of any other circumstance where that worked. So it just seems almost like you're really imbeciles if you can't figure out, maybe we should be calling them feminazis or tranny-Nazis or something like that, because yes, this calling them social justice warriors seems quite unproductive to our cause. because most people will figure out somewhere in their head, wait a minute, social justice is a good thing.
They don't like to deal with real problems, and Yale went after Halloween costumes.
So this woman wrote a letter saying maybe we should just relax about this stuff and, you know, not don't put restrictions on what people wear for Halloween, but let people decide what is and isn't offensive.
Yes, and well, many Halloween costumes are offensive. That's the point.
But her letter wasn't really reasonable.
Yeah, it was perfectly reasonable. It was like an adult wrote it.
Yes.
Yeah, and you know, all hell broke loose.
All hell broke
and she
loose.
ended up quitting.
And I think he did.
No, I don't think he left. I don't think he left, but she did.
Seeing him.
Well, they don't even have the story. So apparently somebody wrote a letter saying, yeah, it doesn't matter what people wear as costumes. And then apparently everybody said, no, it does matter. And there was terrible controversy, and many people died. What happened after that? Who wore what costumes? I'm just curious. Any Princess Leia's or anything?
Bow down to this woman screaming at him, swearing in his face, was so disturbing. It was so humiliating. I felt so humiliated for him. Because she was screaming, this is our home, what the fuck are you doing? You're not making this safe.
And it's not a bloody home. The university is not a home.
Right.
It's not a safe space. It's not a secure space. None of that. And
Well, it is if you're going to Pat Robertson University or Liberty University or lots of different kinds of universities, that's exactly what it is. It is a safe place for a certain ideological think tankish kind of thing. And that's, I don't, a sense that gravitation would happen and that there would be a certain efficiency to that. I mean, because you really don't want a whole bunch of diversity while you're attempting. It's like even when you were in school, a whole bunch of diversity in terms of the personalities of the people in the class. I mean, having all kinds of, you know, senses of humor or antics, persons, and you know, all those are just distractions. I mean, that's why they made male and female schools, is to take away one of the distractions, one of the elements of stuff that was fucking with people's attention span.
a university isn't a home. That's not what it is. It's a place to be confronted by, I would say, often horrible ideas. You want to learn about history?
Well, whatever that is. So he thinks he knows history, and he knows all the horrors in the history books. And I have all the secret horror book. You know, so, you know, I just, you know. But that's not what it's for. The point is to collect facts, okay, and in some way organize them in a way where people can retain them in their brain about how systems work and about how things are. But, you know, that would be, to me, the only thing useful about what you call education, is collecting facts, not necessarily dictating how those facts should be interpreted.
It's going to be safe. You know what human history is like? It's an endless bloodbath with a certain amount of hopeful progress underlying it. It's a horror show. And great literature is like that. And biology is terrifying. And physics is terrifying. And you want to be safe. It's stay home. Stay home with your
So again, that's just another preposterous exaggeration of what's being argued in terms of safe is just another way of saying an environment that's conducive to constructive rather than destructive conflict. And to deny that there's this huge element of destructive conflict. Okay, again, I'm a person who hates diversity, so you're not going to fool me with this idea that this is one of the arguments against immigration, is that, you know, if people immigrate here to become Americans, well, you don't have a problem. But if they come here to immigrate here to create their own little Mecca or their own little, you know, Chinatowns and their own little Havanas, then you're not going to have something constructive. You're going to have something destructive to the culture.
Your mom. Stay home with your dad. Don't come to university if you want to be safe. Because
Don't go outside.
No, if the university is going to make you safe, then it ceased to be a university. So one of the things I try to do in my class, I have this class called Maps of Meaning, which concentrates on atrocity, basically, on Soviet atrocity and Nazi atrocity.
Yes, you're totally focused on your own myopic, propagandist, I'd argue, perspective of history and the world dynamics. And yes, so, and if somebody else had another class that did exactly the opposite, that is, that made the arguments for why these are heroic characters in human history and they were necessary to the development of human character, and that the West has been nothing but a suppressor of the truth. That people like Napoleon were just mass murderers of huge volumes of intellectual capital, for God.
Mostly. And what I try to do in the class is to teach my students that had they been in Nazi Germany in the 1930s, they would have been Nazis. And had they been offered the opportunity to be an Auschwitz camp guard, then maybe they would have leapt at it. And maybe they would have been in the more sadistic proportion of the Auschwitz camp guard population. You think that makes you feel safe? It doesn't make you feel safe to know that Nazis were humans and you happen to be one of them. So,
well, again, it really does have to do with the condition that you're in before. So it depends on how much education you have and how much capacity you have to protect yourself against any of those controlling mechanisms. But you really have to understand that propaganda doesn't work on people that have any kind of intellectual capital. So I suppose the argument could be made that maybe Germans were recovering from World War I. Maybe they weren't very enlightened, because they didn't have any. There wasn't any switch going off in their head that says, well, there's something fundamentally wrong about this bullshit.
Well, I think that educators that tell students that they're offering them a safe space are doing them a profound disservice. And I'm a clinical psychologist, and here's one of the things you do.
Well, again, a clinical psychologist who knows how to bullshit, that's for sure. Because again, this is a straw man argument. I guess that's what I should have pointed out. Straw man argument. The safety isn't from the viewpoint that there are other viewpoints in the world. The safety is from the huge distraction of just ending up saying, I'm really not going to sit down next to some guy who's got a swastika tattooed on his head. I'm not going to sit there and play along and say, let's all just get along, when we fundamentally have ideas about reality that are completely toxic to each other's perspective. There is a certain amount of how that's not going to work. I'm not going to sup with the devil. Maybe you will, but I'm not going to.
To make people less afraid. You don't make the world safer. What you do is people tell you what they're afraid of, and then you break it into little bits so that they can go confront them. So maybe they're afraid of going to a party, and you break that down. You say, well, you know how to introduce yourself. And they say, well, I don't really know how to shake someone's hand. And so then you practice having them shake their hand and introduce themselves, because maybe they weren't taught by that by their half-witted parents when they were young, because they were ignored. And so then you say, well, maybe you can go to a party for half an hour, and all you have to do is introduce yourself to two people, and then we'll call that success. And you build up their confidence one step at a time. And what happens, the clinical literature indicates...
Again, so what does this have to do with anything except you saying that I'm sure they're deluded, misunderstanding idiots for not understanding how socialism is bad, and it's really good to have 1% of the people inherit ownership of the world, that's the way the world should be run. When I can make the counter argument, no, your kind are the imbeciles, and all I need is a little bit of time to explain to them how they've been wrongly introduced to reality, and that they're fundamentally evil in the sense that they're not even pretending the word fairness means something, in the sense that it's such an obvious cheat. Inheritance based on genetic code, based on what vagina you fall out of. That's the silliest earned entitlement. That's not an earned entitlement.
It's quite clearly is you don't make people less anxious by doing that. You make them braver. It's not the same thing. You don't make the world and its horrors smaller. You make the person and their capacity to deal with horror larger. You encourage them. You strengthen them. That's what you do at a university. You arm people with arguments. You hone their intellect. You help.
Right, but that's not what we're really talking about. We're talking about people who wish to turn it into a mocking contest. I'll wear the bobble Reagan head. You wear the bobble whatever, tranny supporter head or whatever. And we'll just argue with our bobble heads. We'll argue with who can come up with the grossest slogans for a t-shirt and say that that's productive. No, it's not productive. It's stupid. It's immature. Small minds think that's fun.
Help them learn to write so they can marshal their arguments. You help them learn how to engage in intellectual combat, because that's better than engaging in real combat. You make them hard and strong. Mollycoddle them and make them safe, unless you're their enemy, unless you're trying to devour their spirit. And that's what we have in the universities. We have the reign of the Oedipal mother, who's answered everything. Is, just come a little closer, dear, and I'll protect you from the world. It's just like Hansel and Gretel's, the witch in the Hansel and Gretel story. Well, my house is made of gingerbread. Just come in here and everything will be fine. While she feeds you candy to fatten you up so she can eat you. That's the archetype of a modern university.
So again, this isn't hysterically over-dramatized and drawn bullshit. There's this recognition that kids, okay, going to college, and they're still kind of kids, maybe haven't achieved that kind of level of maturity where they can understand how to fight a fair fight, how to make a good argument, and instead they're really going to be kind of, placards and signs. Hell no, we won't, ... And yeah, they've got to do a little better than that.
When did this start? When did the trigger warnings, when did the safe spaces, when did all this emerge?
Well, it has its roots in the student radicalism of the 1960s, especially the far-left radicalism.
So again, it's always the liberals' fault. Oh, yes. And it's radical. The radical was a fight against Christian morality, dress codes, Elvis's hips. That was the kind of shit your people were afraid of. Your Anita Bryant, orange juice in America bullshit. I mean, you homophobic creepoids. So you really can't escape what this guy is. He's a homophobe. He keeps running back to the sex, drugs, and rock and roll liberation movements of the 60s, the anti-war movement against the whole industrial military complex. Women burning their bras, the Ms. America, right? He can't stand that shit. I mean, he wants to go back to, 1748 or something, America.
Really popped up in the 1990s, in the early 90s, when I was teaching in the U.S. at that point. And
Which
I taught at Harvard from 93 to 98, and there was a fair push for political correctness, especially in the early part of the 90s. But it got pushed back down and disappeared and went underground. It went underground is more accurate, and then it's just come back with a vengeance in the
underground, it went on the internet, I guess, right? Yeah.
Last 5 years. And I think it's partly because we have all these radical left political activist departments at the universities, women's studies being at the top of the list, that have done nothing for the last 30 years. It's even longer than that now. It's almost 40 years. 30 years, let's...
Okay, 30 years, 40 years. Yes, women having departments and such. Whatever that is, as a complaint.
Say, have done nothing but produce a never-ending stream of ideologically minded counter-civilization political activists. And that's all subsidized.
Okay, counter-civilizations, he claims, again. So, and the threat to civilization is this idea of something more egalitarian, something more kinder, gentler America, and thoroughly less, corporate, military, industrial complex, and anti-war.
By tuition and by the public purse. And that's another thing we really got to ask ourselves, is why the hell are we subsidizing revolution? Why are we doing that? It's crazy. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous.
I mean, he said it, right? I don't know. What kind of revolution? Oh, cultural revolution. Revolution from what? Racism, chauvinism, and elitism. I mean, in the rich entitlement class.
What exactly is going on with women's studies that you believe is fostering revolution?
Well, you go on their websites and read what they say. I mean, first of all, for the women's studies types, and this is what would you call it? False anthropology. There's this idea that way back when there was a feminist paradise, and that would be like a noble savage mode of living where everything was egalitarian and women dominated. It was a matriarchal culture. That was put forward by a UCLA anthropologist named Gembutes. I can never pronounce her name properly, but I think I got it. And then that was overthrown by patriarchal institutions, essentially starting at about the time, say, of Judaism. And that was all overthrown, and ever since then we've lived in an oppressive patriarchy. And that's what our culture is. It's an oppressive patriarchy.
So they're pointing to one unsuccessful society that they believe existed, or did it actually exist?
No, it didn't exist. There's no evidence for it whatsoever. It's complicated.
Well, it's complicated. There's no evidence, but it's complicated. Well, I think it is complicated in the sense that the chimpanzee bonobo comparison is interesting. I mean, in my opinion, they both fail. But clearly one of them, alpha status, is dictated on the mother side. And it is the males who leave the tribe. So the things that get kicked out are the men. And in the other, the chimpanzees, or is it the other way around? Chimpanzees, the males get kicked out. Bonobos, the females leave. Yeah, that's it. Okay. And yeah, so one's run primarily based on the alpha female, One's run based on the alpha male. And, they both commit genocidal war. They both do all kinds of stuff. One has more fake huggy sex. They all, dry hump each other a lot more and do other fondlings. Touchy-feely. And the other's more rapey. But yeah, they both suck. So what's the difference? Yeah, that would be my argument to both of these fighting clans of matriarch versus patriarch. Is the bottom line is either one of them is both of them are going to be humans, and the only good human is a smart human. So if they're not smart first, they're going to suck. Because you have to be smart enough to know you suck. So if you're walking into your ocracy, your control mechanism, not recognizing the fact that the fundamental machine is a piece of shit, a selfish cunt, then you're not going to succeed in organizing your society, and it's going to suck. It's going to do stupid things.
But it's the telling of a kind of psychological myth as if it was history. Well, and anyway, so the basic claim is...
And your definition of history is that, no, the males have always been in charge, and they always did good things for us. Made us winners by killing everything.
Western civilization is a brutish patriarchy, and that whatever positive things it might have managed to accomplish were all accomplished as a consequence of oppression and theft, and that the appropriate thing...
Yes, and that's true, right? I mean, it's kind of overtly true. It was just, and we're doing it right now. We're just saying to the rest of the world, look, you can have a fight with us, but we're going to cheat because we have nukes. So we're always going to win. So, and all you can do is, you can do some terrorism, and that'll just make you look even worse. And so that'll make us easier for us to kill you, because it'll make you look like the guilty party. See how this is just made for us. I mean, it's just such a great way to be, is to have all the big guns, and then you can just dictate to everybody else about what right and wrong is. And that's what we've done.
To do is to restructure it from the bottom up, and they mean that. They mean every single bloody concept, and you can marry that with modern postmodernism and throw in a nice dash of Marxism, and you have the...
So again, you can just, he keeps throwing it in there. He doesn't want to see anything called real social justice. He doesn't like social justice. It's not social justice warriors he's afraid of. He doesn't like the idea of social justice. He wishes to keep it a system controlled by a very few white males, quite obviously.
The ideological and motivated grounds for social revolution. Just go online and look at a dozen women's studies websites. Just read them. You can see what they say.
Well, I think you could have quoted something that was of somewhat meaning, so oblige me to go find it.
Produce political activists, and their goal is to restructure the patriarchy. Well, what's the patriarchy? Well, the patriarchy is Western civilization. And what does restructure mean? That's easy. It means tear it down and destroy it. Why?
Yes, because it's fundamentally cancerous. It's disgustingly stupid. It's fundamentally unfair and illegitimate in terms of it has no social value. It's not going to create healthy civilization. It's going to create some kind of thing that goes around the world killing shit, as it did in the past and as it wishes to continue to do, but it's just more difficult now.
It's a brutish system that's predicated on...
I mean, everybody's got a cell phone. You can, you can videotape the atrocities as they're happening.
Nothing but oppression. It's nothing but a tyranny in the eyes of the radical women's studies types. Heterosexuality, that's a tyranny. Capitalism, that's a tyranny. Democracy, well, that doesn't even exist. And even if it did...
Well, of course, capitalism is a tyranny. So again, look, I mean, all these people are trying to defend this as being something other than this guy being somebody who is for, a legacy owner civilization, essentially the monarchy. He's just defending the king and the queen, and that's all he's doing here. And clearly the problems with this whole feminism thing, again, that is historical fact that women were property. So you can't unravel the nature of the patriarchy in the sense that it did exist. You can't say that was a myth. That was a fact.
It would be a tyranny. Everything's a tyranny. So you can ask these, and what would they replace it with? They replace it with their own ideological utopia. Well, we've already had 100 years of that. We saw what happened. Oh, well,
so again, so he's just going to keep saying that anybody who is anti-capitalism is Stalin, or Lenin, or Mao, or Pol Pot, or something. That's all. He doesn't have any other argument but to straw man and scapegoat, to pretend that somehow socialist theory has been actualized in the world somewhere, when we know that the elements of socialism that do exist in the world have worked, like in healthcare and stuff. It does bring the cost down. $10,000 per person in America versus whatever it is in Canada, which I imagine is much less than $10,000 per person per year.
No, that wasn't real Marxism. That's what the bloody Marxists always say. That wasn't real Marxism. It's like, oh, how many millions of people have to die before you're convinced that it's real Marxism?
So that's a proof argument. That's how he proves it's real Marxism, is because, well, of course, Marx said everybody has to die. You have to kill, and you know, all that stuff. You can't just win a political movement. I mean, what a pile of crap. So he proves the rich should inherit the world with the argument that anything else has to lead to gulags.
What they mean by that, too, they mean, hey, if I was the Marxist dictator, things would have gone a lot better. It's like, you should think again, sunshine. If you...
you should think again, sunshine. I mean, what the hell is that? Well, I just can't wait till Trump gets done, okay? Because you're going to have to defend Trump. And so good luck with that asshole. And I don't even, like I said, how you couldn't, in any kind of historical context, defend the grotesque waste that is the byproduct of this fondling of monarchy. It just leads to preposterous. We got Europe is covered with useless castles that took hundreds of years to build. And they have no fucking value.
Were the Marxist dictator, things wouldn't have gone a lot better. So, and if you're the sort of person that thinks that if you would have been in control, things would have gone a lot better, then you're exactly the sort of person who should never be in control.
Yeah, and the proof of that is what? What logical proof of that is to make the argument that, look, I'm the guy willing to say you can kill me, okay? You can put a little kill button right on my forehead, a little, you know, one of those things that kills cows. We can put the helmet right, glue it right on, surgically implant it onto my head. So the minute that more than 50% of the people think I suck, I die. You know, you can have systems where somebody wants the power because they know it can be done so much better, because they're not going to find the cronyism. They're not racist. They're not bigots. They just want to do the job right because they know it can be done right. All right, they can be done with principles, and we know that in these other examples it wasn't done right. Okay, Putin's a millionaire. We know that communism wasn't about the people and a principle. It was about a party. It was about a group, okay, and them controlling the other groups. And we know that those corruptions exist, but we know that now, more than at any time in history, we have the power to create accountability and scrutiny. And that right now, every single public employee could be obligated to sign a contract that says, yes, you go to prison for 10 years if you're caught stealing anything. Why not? Why shouldn't cops have a death penalty for violating constitutional rights intentionally? Why not? If we had any character, that's the kind of public servant we would want. Is somebody willing to say, there's nothing about what I intend to do that it's dishonest. I intend to do the job right, not the job wrong. I mean the opposite job.
So, and it's resentment. It's horrible resentment, you know.
That's an important point, because I think this is something that you said that I absolutely agree with. That I think a lot of this thinking and the way people are behaving, it seems based on revenge. It seems based on revenge for awkward upbringings, social uncomfortability. It seems like there's something about the way they view the world where they want to get back at people that have literally done them no wrong.
It's resentment.
I don't even understand part of this, right? He has these cultural icons behind him that you would assume he has some affiliation to in some way. So apparently the only connection is they smoked pot. Apparently that's it. but they didn't represent anything else ideologically, because he's opposed to everything else they represented ideologically, which was an attack against Western civilization. I mean, the irony of this crap.
For the burden of being, it's deeper. It's deeper. I mean, human existence is characterized by a fair bit of suffering. You know, we're limited creatures, and life is very hard. Everyone dies. Everyone you love is going to die. Most of the things you do, all of the things you do, will eventually fail. You know, suffering is a certainty, and it's very easy for people to become resentful about being, about existence. You know, these kids who shoot up high schools.
Yeah. And your argument is that we should suppress all of that thinking. That thinking has gotten way out of control. We've liberated it much too much. We've let that fester in the mind of our youth, and allowed them to feel that maybe this whole lie of Western civilization, this grotesque lie, okay, that there's something meaningful in this whole nationalism march down a stupid toilet of let's steal from the rest of the world, let's enslave the Chinese, let's put our slaves in China so nobody can see them anymore. That kind of crap absolutely sucks.
And these mass shooters, they're the perfect examples of people who run on nothing but resentment. They're out to kill the innocent because that's the best marker of, that's the best way of showing just how much contempt they have for existence itself. Why punish the...
Well, again, that's just a silly mischaracterization. I mean, obviously their targets are small-minded targets, personal targets. But obviously they picked targets, the most famous shooters, they picked targets that were quite personally related to their burdens. They shot the bullies, by their definition.
They deserve to be punished. It's a lot more malevolent and vengeful to punish the innocent. It's like people are motivated to a great degree by resentment of being, and a huge chunk of that is manifested.
Right. So I mean, the Dick Cheneys and the Bushes of the world, they're all innocent. You know, they're not. They haven't played silly games with the lives of billions of people. No.
That's the dark side of ideological possession. So I get to decide who my enemies are, and then I get to go after them, and I can go after them for every single thing that's ever been done to me that isn't good. And a lot of that's just built into the structure of existence.
Then they group up. They exhibit confirmation bias. They all form some sort of a group think.
Oh yeah, and again, these are all okay, great, but these are the same exact arguments can just be used to the other side. I mean, you're the ones that have the confirmation bias. You just sit there, and Donald Trump gets in a group full of liars and cheaters and tax cheats, and they all, hey, yeah, you did the right thing. You know, the governor of New Jersey did that, right? Oh, hey, he didn't do anything wrong. He did exactly what the law allows. Cheat on your taxes. Yeah, he did it. Smart man. Cheat where you can. That's the principle now. Because it's mutually beneficial. You lie for them, they'll lie for you.
And then they act accordingly. And this is what you've been warning against, and this is where I completely agree with you, and this is why I think the subject is so important. And I love the way you've outlined all the steps and the problems with Marxism and ideologies in general. That we are dealing with this.
He didn't bring up anything that has anything to do with Marxism. So again, this is just such a gross lie. What evidence do you have that anything Marx advocated for has anything to do with what was implemented in your Stalinist states, or even in Nazi Germany, which was far from socialism?
Beginning steps of it, and people who look at it now and they say it's social change, it's social justice. It's not. It's not.
It's not. That's right. It's not. And this is not going to improve things. Implementing these policies will make things worse. They've made things worse every single place they've ever been implemented. And often... Right,
and you've got evidence of that in what form? Again, there's no evidence that Europe has gotten less interesting, less vital even, less functional, because over the last 10 years, or 15 years, let's say, it has jumped on the more progressive track than, say, the places like the United States.
They've made things so much worse that you actually can't imagine it. And people don't do the reading. I've done the reading. I know how bad things can get. They can get so bad that no matter how bad you think they are, you're not even in the bloody ballpark.
Yeah, whatever that, again, he's just boogeyman all over the place. I know the boogeyman story. I went to the boogeyman cave and I took photographs and I did all this investigation. I know the boogeyman's coming. I saw the boogeyman's plans and I saw his secret book of boogeyman asylums, and he's going to create boogeyman camps and blah blah blah.
Well, it's just so strange that these sort of courses and these sort of ideologies are thriving in universities. And it's really disconcerting to someone who has children. And you know that your children are going to go there and they're going to get exposed to these ideas.
You know, I think that
Wow,
I think
the
that
guy
the
used to teach at
universities.
Harvard just said,
So again, you're saying you're gonna send your kid to a college to take one of these, whatever they are, wacky courses run by the wacky professors, and you're afraid of, like, say, most of the institutional professors that are going to be teaching things like computer science or something. Can you show me some computer science professors you find really scary? I mean, maybe the physics guy. Maybe you don't like that sus guy, you know, that one, that Californian, you know, from Stanford. You know, thinks that Trump is an insult to human intelligence. Maybe you don't like that he said that. That scares you, that a smart person would recognize that Trump is a preposterous insult to our dignity.
to trade school.
I think the universities. I think the universities. I think you can make a reasonable case that the universities do more harm than good now. I hate to say that.
Right. So that also makes sense, right? That people go to universities and they get brainwashed into being what? Super tranny somethings or something. They go and knit a bunch of their underoos, the super trannaroos, and they have they learn how to use their magic wands and shit, and it's like going to the magic school, you know, whatever the name of that shit. It's Henry Potter. You know, they learn how to use their magic powers, crystals. Oh, this is such bullshit.
Well, this is a strange time where access to information is so incredibly easy. You could educate yourself
Right.
seemingly endlessly online, and with books, and there's so much information available. This is not the 1930s. It's
Yeah.
not a time where it was difficult to get an education outside of a
Yeah, well,
university.
the universities may have, or the university, which is like the repository of human wisdom and the attempt to expand that, may have already moved outside the universities.
Well, whatever that means. So now he's going to make some claim that the universities already own the internet and the structure, and they're going to control our minds no matter what we do. No, it's already a dying institution, and again, it was failed from the very start. Again, why would anybody have the expectation that a bunch of empowered high school students should be the factory of political movements? I mean, that's a silly expectation anyway. That kind of stuff really has to be top down. Intellectuals down, not students up. And we know that every institution is now being controlled by the people it serves. So the news isn't really the news. The news is what do the group of, what do the people who watch our crap want to hear. So Fox tells the righties what they want to hear. CNN tells the lefties what they want to hear. It's all of that kind of bullshit going on. It has nothing to do with the truth anymore. And universities have been stuck in that mess for a long time.
You know, just because an institution calls itself a university doesn't mean it is. And many disciplines have turned.
Yes, there's the University of the Americas, which is a place where foreigners come to learn how to be despots. We train the dictators of the world. Right? And you're not ashamed of that. I mean, the FOD children and such will come here to America to learn how to gas their people.
To ideological factories. And so where's the university? I mean, the university is where anyone wants to learn about their culture and where anyone wants to expand the domain of human competence. And a lot of that's happening online now. So maybe that's the future. The only thing the universities have now, I think, that people can't get elsewhere is accreditation. But they're doing everything they can as fast as possible to make their accreditation valueless anyways.
I don't think they have any way to stop that from happening. That's the whole point. I mean, it's like cassette tapes and the ownership of music and all that, and stopping people from stealing it. Yeah, there's a certain point where the performance art of these institutions is the value of it is going to be null, zero, and it should happen on purpose, because what we really should do is pay students to learn things that are valuable to society. We should pay them to learn how to be doctors and lawyers and engineers and architects and all that kind of crap. And we shouldn't be paying idiots to teach it. We should just be paying the people who have to consume the knowledge and develop the knowledge to pass tests. It's that simple. Measuring what people know is not difficult. And educating them is also not difficult. It's providing them access more than anything else, and providing them incentive. It's creating the hunger and then providing the food bowls. Give them the lab materials and then give them the incentive to use them. Pay them, not teachers. Put you people out of business, Professor.
So, yeah, it's a terrible thing to say that the universities may do more harm than good, and I haven't come to that conclusion lightly.
Well,
and I hate to say it.
I'm sure you do. There's also a gigantic financial stake, the amount of money that you're...
Well, and this is especially the case in the U.S. I mean, one of the things that's happened over the last 30 years is that the proportion of university expenditures that's gone to the administration has massively increased. And at the same time, the student loan burden has increased. And so what's happened in a weird sense is that the administrators have conspired to steal the future earnings of their students. And then you can't declare bankruptcy. So to me...
Yeah, the same difference as the stealing the money for who, though? Again, for these performance artists. And where did a ton of this money go? Oh, they'll pay millions of dollars to get a coach who can swindle, make deals to get the best players so their team, can win the football game. That's the kind of pointless and idiotic distractions that universities are driven by. The show, not the go.
It's indentured servitude.
But you can't declare bankruptcy on student loans.
Right,
That's
right. You cannot declare bankruptcy on student loans. So you think about that. You tell me what difference there is between that and indentured servitude.
There's not much, because it's the only thing that I can even think of where that's the case.
Corporations can go bankrupt.
Right,
They
and
do all the
individuals
time.
can. Individuals can. Businesses can fail.
Well, you don't understand the difference that the loans are basically government guaranteed. And so the money has to come out of the tax dollars as the way to pay for it. Where if creditors lose money, well, they lose money because that's a business decision. So they didn't. What's the argument you made? It's not as directly paid by the people. I'd say that it's still going to end up being the cost of production. So you're still going to see the cost of all bankruptcy is still going to be in the price of every product you buy. But it's so direct when it comes to anything guaranteed by the government that, of course, bankruptcy on a government loan should be impossible. You shouldn't be able to just say, I'm going to dump that responsibility onto people who didn't borrow the money.
You can be deemed incompetent or not capable of paying your debt in every other case, but not with universities.
Yeah, right.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
It's crazy.
Again, it's really not. And if people really understood what bankruptcy was, that it is really going to be paid by ultimately the consumers, then they'd know that there was no point in having this idea of a free bankruptcy. That there's just no point in doing it. Because what it means is that you're basically forcing somebody else to subsidize other people's mistakes, and that you're not giving, that you're breaking reward and punishment. No point in breaking it. And that's why they modified bankruptcy, frankly, and it should be modified in the sense that you should always carry the burden of a responsibility that maybe in some day you'll be able to pay the debt. It should always hang over you, whether or not we're draconian about collecting it. Maybe we'll collect it over 300 years and you're only going to live to be 100, but the point is it probably should always exist as an obligation.
Because they were just trying to combat the issue where so many kids were defaulting on their student loans. They try to make you perpetually responsible for it, or the idea is that these kids have to learn responsibility. Is that the way to do it? By overcharging them for some useless education?
I would also say that it's not a particular...
Well, they haven't been overcharged. That's another whole big lie. They've been undercharged. Their loan has been subsidized in terms of the interest rate. So again, this is just... What is this bullshit? I mean, it's bullshit.
Particularly useful to burden your citizenry with a massive debt as soon as they graduate, at a time when they're most likely to take entrepreneurial risks.
Yes.
You're not going to take entrepreneurial risks if you're so burdened.
So again, we have the entrepreneurial risk bullshit. The great, whatever that is, I'm sorry, I just don't have my best vernacular, but there's a word for that Trojan horse kind of bullshit. And, entrepreneur is just another word for selfish cunt looking to gouge the fuck out of you. Middleman, racket, gimmick. That's all entrepreneur means. I got a gimmick. And I'm going to fuck some dumb people with it.
With debt, you can't get yourself off the ground.
Yeah, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt with people that, if you're lucky, you're going to make, what, $40,000, $50,000 a year straight out of college?
Right, so why don't you just honestly say poor people shouldn't have kids? Because they really can't finance it. It's a huge expense. People don't take the responsibility seriously. Why don't you just overtly say poor people should be stopped from having children because there's no way they can finance what it really takes to make a citizen who's prepared to be a contributor in our society. Because it takes $1 million, and the poor person on making $10 an hour is never going to have the $1 million to raise the kid right. But why should other people have to pay for it who didn't have kids?
Well, if you're lucky. So you're dealing with the amount of money that you would have to make if you didn't pay any taxes or didn't have any expenses. You'd have to work for 4 or 5 years, longer than you would actually be in...
Right, well, and that's part of the catch, right? When I was going to go to college, I had already saved the money. I actually had worked since I was 11 years old, and so by the time I was 17, I had my 4 years of tuition covered. Okay? I had the money. I didn't like the idea I was going to spend it in a stupid college, but I had the money.
College to get that degree in the first place. It's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane.
I would say, too, to the university students who are listening, like a lot of your professors are Marxists. Ask them if they're Marxists. Read the Gulag Archipelago.
So again, he's just so fucking obsessed with this idea of any threat to this 1% owns 70% of the resources on this planet. He doesn't want anybody attacking this idiotic, not earned society where you inherit it. Fuck you. You suck.
Go first, because you need to get your arguments together. And Solzhenitsyn won a Nobel Prize for that book and for his other writing, and it was one of the key.
Yeah, I could name a bunch of Nobel Prize winners you're not gonna like. So what's the fuck's the point of that crap? Obama won 1 or 2 for complete bullshit. He won a peace prize for planning war.
There was a couple of things that brought down the Soviet Union, but one of them was Alexander Solzhenitsyn's book, and he demolished the intellectual credibility of Marxism forever. But yeah.
Oh, what a pile of shit that is. But anyway, continue, retard. I've already explained the whole Soviet Union. Look, the Soviet Union would still exist if it wasn't for the fact that their leadership, right? They had a real leadership crisis. So Brezhnev died, then the next guy died in 2 years, and then the next guy died in like 3 years. And they had a real problem because they're all old farts. And so then they said, oh, let's let that Gorbachev guy do it. You know, he's young and he's compassionate and all that kind of shit. And Gorbachev was the end of the Soviet Union. Because, yeah, Gorbachev didn't get it. You know, he just didn't. He didn't understand how dangerous it was to play. He thought he could play in, like, half capitalism. Like, he could... You know, you could collect a bunch of, Soviet money and put in the stock market or something. I don't know what his wacky ideas were. But Gorbachev was the ruin of the Soviet Union. And a guy too immature to understand how dangerous the game is he was playing. Got him way over his head.
To read the damn book. And you've got to get your arguments in order. You go after your Marxist professors. Ask them.
It's a difficult book to read.
It's a very difficult book to read. It's a very difficult book, although it's difficult.